Hello, I'm Guy Hoffman, and you're watching The Red Booth Show.
Hi, welcome to The Red Booth Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Q. On tonight's episode, I have musician Guy Hoffman, who was formerly in the Violent Femmes. So, come and join us.
Cool. You want to do one more?
Sure. Hi, welcome to The Red Booth Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Q. On tonight's episode, I have musician Guy Hoffman, formerly of the Violent Femmes, and we talk about his career and what he's doing now. So, come and join us. So, Guy, this is so exciting to have you on the show. I can't tell you how much of a fan I have been of the Violent Femmes, which I know you were a part of for a very long time, and it's just amazing that you're here on my show.
Well, that's cool. I'm honored to be here.
Well, you've actually been doing music for a long time, and you have a lot more that you're doing now that's a little bit different. So we're going to be getting into some fun stories about what Guy Hoffman is up to. But I would love to start off just kind of talking about who you are, so people who maybe don't know about you should get to know who you are.
Okay, well, I'm a musician, a drummer. I do a little singing, and as a young tyke, I had very little life experience, semi-irresponsible, and there was one record in my parents' collection that had to do with rock or blues, and it was Elvis Presley's Golden Hits. I listened to this record a lot when I was a little tyke, and I didn't know what a heartbreak was or what a hotel was, but it was different from the other stuff in their collection, And then as I became a young grade schooler in the third grade, the system asked hundreds of kids to learn an instrument to amass a concert orchestra and a band. And they asked me to play the drum. And so there were 6 or 7 of us that started learning how to play the drum, And after a year went by, a couple of them dropped away. They didn't like it, had no interest in it. I liked it a lot. I had something going on there with it. And then a couple of years went by, and there were 3 or 4 of us that stuck with it, right? So I stuck with the concert snare drum and learned how to play in the context of that orchestra.
Wow.
Of course, on the back burner, we have the British invasion coming to America. And
the Beatles,
the Animals, the Kinks, the Yardbirds, the whole thing, right? So as a young boy, I would get little pieces of drum kit for birthdays or Christmas until eventually I had a whole drum kit, a small one, albeit. And so now I'm equipped to get together with my schoolmates to play the rock and roll. And there were 3 questions that we'd always ask one another. One was, what instrument do you play? Can you sing? And can we practice at your parents' house? See? So
because they needed a place to play. The band always needs a place, right?
We have to have a place to play.
Right.
And most of the time, they delegated us to the garage. Occasionally, we'd be in the house. And so that's pretty much how it all started for me, and how my affair started with playing the drums and just being in the band.
That's so cool. It actually shows how important it is for the schools to have music programs, that so many musicians have actually started by taking school music.
It's true.
And
it's
that has
true.
been a lot less in recent years in public school.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're trying to help make sure that everyone gets more music in the schools and stuff.
It's true. I stuck with that through high school. I tell you, it's an invaluable experience.
Well, especially being with a big orchestra too. I mean,
right.
Like that in itself is a...
Right.
You have to work with all these other people and get along.
That's true. And you learn how to read music.
Oh, right. Yeah, definitely.
And you're actually sitting with all the other musicians and watching them play their instruments, and you get a sense of how they do it, and it's a whole other experience in the orchestra compared to just rock and roll in a garage.
It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I would have never thought that you came from an orchestra background, because obviously, I mean, like the Violent Femmes is totally opposite style of music. But okay, so I would love to hear how you transitioned to that point where you became a part of that band and what was happening leading up to that.
Okay, when I was in school, even in college, they never taught rock and roll. They never taught how to play the guitar. It was all, very formal. Even in the 70s, it was still, all rock and roll was very taboo in the educational system. So I'm always having little rock bands. And so I graduated from college. I took art because I didn't really like anything else. And then this is around 1977, 78, and there's this whole new thing going on with punk music and this whole new revolution. And so I got involved with a punk power pop band in Milwaukee, my roots.
Right.
See. And we became very well celebrated there. It was a quartet. We were called the Haskels.
Nice.
After Eddie Haskell.
Cool.
Good morning, Mrs. Cleaver. That Eddie Haskell.
Nice.
And so that band lasted for a couple years, and the bass player and I fractioned off from that, and we made a trio with a saxophone player, kind of a new wave experimental thing. So we were a band that had no guitars for a while. That was called the Oil Tasters, and we were well celebrated again in Milwaukee. And
we have to take a quick break.
Okay.
Hold that thought.
I'm holding it.
Good. We'll be right back with musician Guy Hoffman. And welcome back to the Red Booth Show. I'm here with Guy Hoffman, and he was just telling us a story about when you were in Milwaukee and you had the first band, and then you were onto the Oil
Tasters.
The Oil Tasters.
Yes.
Okay, that was the next band that you were in.
Yes.
Punk band.
It was a punk new wave type thing. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And we had our own
Early
clubs.
80s.
Early 80s. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of music in Milwaukee, believe it or not. It was a huge, huge music scene. And we had but one or two clubs. And as the clubs folded, all the groups had nowhere to go. They lost their home sweet home. And so I just contemplated leaving the city because there was nothing going on much. And I met a couple of guys through relationships in Milwaukee, and they could really sing well together, and they didn't look alternative, which was a good thing. And that turned into what people know as the BoDeans. Two guys that sing together, and a drummer and a bass player. And we signed a contract with Slash and Warner in '85, and we were on the tour in '86. So all my dreams came true very quickly, and it came out of Milwaukee,
And were you one of the singers, or were you doing drums?
I was just the drummer in the band.
You were the drummer?
I did a little singing,
Cool.
although the other two guys were primarily the singing
Right.
duo and the writers and all that.
Cool. So you toured with the BoDeans?
I did. I made the first record with them and did the first tour. And then things came to a halt for personal reasons, and just things happen.
Right? You don't have to tell us.
I won't.
Okay, good. Good.
So,
That's very good.
I did find myself going back to Milwaukee
Oh.
to retrace some steps in the early 90s.
Oh, so you were with them for most of the 80s then?
No, I was just with them for the 1 year.
Okay.
And then I actually lived somewhere else in a whole different life experience. And I did go back to Milwaukee.
You just skipped over
I did skip.
what?
I'm
well,
skipping.
Okay, fine. But I'd really love to know where you went.
Okay. Northern California.
Okay.
Yes.
And what were you doing there?
I was raising my daughter with a wonderful family.
Amazing.
It was so different.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. Yes.
I think that being a parent is one of the most magical things ever.
It is.
I have 3 of my own children.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that's super cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you did the BoDeans, then you became a dad.
I did.
Okay. That's cool.
And then I found myself back in Milwaukee for various reasons. And while I was there in '93, I was asked to do a little touring with the trio called Violent Femmes. One of their members was unavailable, you see, the drummer. And me being the drummer, and also from Milwaukee, and having some relations with the guys.
Right.
We weren't really friends, we were more acquaintances. You know.
Right. You knew of each other.
We knew of one another.
Right.
But we're like always ships passing in the night.
Weren't there quite a few bands that came out of Milwaukee at that time that were also in the punk scene?
There were a few that might have made it out of there in more regional ways, you know, playing Chicago or Madison. There's this little triangle, I call it the Bermuda Triangle of the Midwest. It's hard to get out of there because it's not really an entertainment industry there.
Right.
It's just a lot of big towns, like small cities, you know.
Right.
And with the big town, you get the big city problems. So it can be, it's an interesting place, I'll tell you that. But usually what starts in Milwaukee stays in Milwaukee, with the exception of a few things. And you have to always cut your own path to get out of there. Even people I know that have been doing it for 2 decades, you know, they're still cutting their own path. And they're well known outside of this little triangle. But it all has to do with them and not the industry itself.
Interesting, because there's just not the infrastructure there for the
That's right.
for the industry. But Happy Days came from there, right?
Happy Days did come from
See, there you go.
It did.
That was a
And
national
that
phenomenon.
70s show
There
came
you
from
go.
there. Yes, it did. And it's all true. Most of it is all very true and very, very realistic to the times, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were telling me you started to play with the Violent Femmes. They reached out to you because their drummer was missing. And
He was unavailable for a spring tour.
okay.
And I said, okay, I'll do it. So we
Was this the
practiced.
first band you played with since you've been a dad and sort of
Yes.
taken leave?
Well, I was playing music with friends where I lived.
Right, right.
But this is the first time a professional situation approached me.
And how well known were they at that time?
Well, they were looking at starting their second decade, so they were big.
Cool.
They had a new record coming out, which was like it was a great collection of their songs, not hits. They never had a hit up to that point, but they had a lot of songs that the young kids liked. So they had a collection, and I started touring that collection and learning all the material, see?
Cool.
And then one thing led to another. After the tour, I did a little recording, and
Oh, we have to take another break. We'll get to hear the rest of the story about the recording when we come back with Guy Hoffman. And welcome back to the Red Booth Show. I'm here with musician Guy Hoffman. And you were just telling us a story about starting to tour with the Violent Femmes and then also recording with the Violent Femmes. So go ahead.
so yes, I recorded a record with them and did a tour with them, and it became a thing. They brought me in for almost 9 years.
Amazing.
Yes,
So-
it was awesome.
Were you a part of the songwriting as well at that point? Like, did you contribute to the next album? And like, I'm just curious how that worked.
No, there was really only one songwriter
Yeah.
with the group, and although we did make 3 or 4 records, you
That's
know,
amazing.
and most usually, well, the tours were great, and the kids were great.
I was one of them. I was definitely one of them. I had your guys' CDs, and I loved it. And I vividly remember the one with the little girl on the front.
The first record.
Okay, so that was the first record.
That was the first one. That was their big one.
That was huge.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and then
Lots of things.
cool. Yeah, that was amazing. And then
Mm-hmm.
you also were with them for the records after that, the next 3. And what are some of the names of those? Do you remember?
The ones that I contributed to were New Times, and one called Rock, and one called Viva Wisconsin,
Nice.
and another one called Freak Magnet.
Nice.
So those all were in the second decade toward the new millennium. But most of the time we were pretty much playing the old stuff because that's what the kids want to come and see. you
Right.
know. So that's how that worked out.
That's cool. So what was it like touring with them? And, you know, that you were obviously with them for almost like a decade.
Almost a decade.
Yeah.
I went places I would have never gone in my life. And I learned how to become a different kind of entertainer as a drummer, because with the Femmes, I'm in the front row now, as opposed to a formal drummer in a rock band who's in the back third of the stage, right? So I'm in the front, and it's a whole other experience that I really loved.
Now, why did they have you in the front?
The front, because they just wanted to bring everything to the edge of the stage to kind of integrate the audience with the band as much as they could. And that was really cool.
That's a great concept.
It's a great idea.
So you were right there in the front looking at the giant audiences.
Yes, well, one of the keys to my my performances was I go out there, I start the beat on the drum again, and I make friends with the kids right in front of me, the 5 or 6 kids. And those are my friends for the whole night. You know, if during the course of the night I get a little bored, or there's a song I'm playing I don't necessarily like, or if I just become like lost, I just go, Guy, who are your friends? Right there in front of me, these young kids with their faces smiling. And so I would make friends with the kids at the foot of the stage right away.
That's cool.
And that was really the key to having a lot of fun every night.
That's so cool. What a great tip. I love it. And you actually brought a cool prop to show everyone as well.
I did. I
which
brought
would
an interesting prop.
Yeah.
Not this. This is no, not that. But I want to protect your table. This is such a cool table.
Thank you.
I know. So we're going to do this, and we're
Okay.
going to do this. And this is a sketch pad that I use. It's just a little snare drum head with a snare underneath it.
It's awesome.
Easy, and I use these in radio show performances. And, you know, so there's a secret to playing that beat over and over and over again. It's very simple. You just raise your right hand with me, and you go like this. I'll use your name, for
Okay.
example. Kimberly, Kimberly, Kimberly. And then if we raise our left hand, Quigley, Quigley, Quigley. So you put them together, a little, raise the tempo a little, and it'd be like this. Like this. Kimberly, Quigley, Kimberly, Quick, Kimberly, Quick, Kimberly, quickly, Kimberly, quick, Kimberly, quickly, Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you.
So that's it. That's the secret to the beat.
You just made a song for me right on the spot.
I know, every girl should have a song written about them.
Dude, that's so awesome. So awesome. Thank you. I mean, you've been playing drums for so long. You can
I
just,
have.
you know, come up with any sort of beat, and it's really
Well, not any sort of beat, but,
well.
you know.
So this is what you use to write music.
I use this, you know, to just tap a rhythm and write a little lyric now and then and to sing.
Cool.
And, you know, it all translates to good things in the future. And oh, yeah.
Wow, I feel super lucky that I just got to have a song created by Guy Hoffman. How cool is that?
It's the beginning of a song.
Yeah, the
We
beginning.
need some verses.
Okay, all right.
Right, we need some verses, but
There we go. Okay, well, we have to take another break.
okay.
But we'll be right back with musician Guy Hoffman. And welcome back to the Red Boost Show. I'm here with Guy Hoffman, who was in the Violent Femmes. And I just have to say one last thing about that, because the inner like teenager inside me is kind of freaking out right now that I get to talk to you, because I had the albums and I got to play them and I loved the music, and it's just so cool. I'm so excited to have you here on the show.
I'm Honored to be on your show.
And also just to hear all this amazing insight into what it's like. And, you know, I would love to hear about what you're doing now as well. I mean, obviously that was a big chapter of your life, but now you have gone on to work on films as well.
I do. I work for a production company called Seasons and Amuse, who put a movie out called The Scarapist.
Cool.
And they asked me to make some music for it. And a couple of pieces found their way into it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you would say you're doing composing for film as your
Yes,
main
some
thing?
of it is soundtrack, meaning a song that pre-exists that you might do a new version of. But other stuff is actual scoring, where it's original music that has something to do with a sequence in a film that needs some kind of background.
Right. So like there's some like tense moment and then you're like, oh, I think we should put this violin here or something like that.
Something like that. The editor that worked on that movie liked to cut to a tempo. And so whenever he would say, we need music for this spot or that spot, and so based upon the tempo and what I see on the footage, I create some music.
Well, that's amazing. And do you do all of the instruments or do you just use sort of tracks or?
Well, the couple pieces that I did for the Scarapist, it was all percussive. There were probably 7 or 8 tracks of percussion and sound. And one of the drums was a talking drum, which allows you to squeeze different notes out of the drum so you can make a melody with it, like you might get with strumming a guitar or playing a piano. You can actually draw a melody out of the drum because it can make different notes.
That's super weird. I've never heard of that before.
Talking drum.
A talking drum.
As
Okay.
like it talks.
Right.
Or sings.
We'll have to check that out.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, and so what else have you been up to as well?
That's about it. I'm making more music for the next motion picture by this company,
Cool.
and it's in post-production now.
That's exciting. That's awesome. I mean, that's a great way to sort of segue as a musician, I think, because people talk about that being a really good way to make money as well. Do you think it's more profitable than being in a band, or how does that work out?
It never works out. And we're still waiting for our lucky day.
I mean, I know that there's a lot of knowledge to have to learn about bands making money, actually making a profit, and making a living doing it.
A career.
It's quite a challenge.
It is, totally.
I mean, even there's bands that have hit songs that the musicians don't actually have. They're not making money on it, or they haven't really made money on it because of the deals that they have and whatever different variables. So do you have, how would you say it compares, like being in a band, touring, and doing composing for movies?
Well, as much as I do miss playing in front of people, I really do. It's a young man's game. And the logical step is to start maybe writing music for other environments like motion picture.
So I would still love to hear some stories about what it's like, being on tour. I know that that's definitely something that a lot of the really successful bands are aspiring to get to. And what are the pros and cons of doing that, and what was it like for you?
Well, the pros and cons of it is that it doesn't last long. And it is a young man's game. It changes every decade. The look of it, the sound of it. And for me, I have my inspirations stopped like in the early 70s. And for some reason, they translated into the 90s. And now the benefit to doing music for motion picture is that it's right for me in my time. I don't really like to go out on tour anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of exhausting, I'm sure.
It can be exhausting,
Yeah.
and flying around in airports now is a whole other situation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have to do it.
But of course, I'm sure in your day it was an amazing experience.
It was amazing, and we had it down to a system. We had it down to a science. It was easy, and I was with friends I trusted and still talk with all the time.
That's amazing.
It is.
That's the key, right? That's what I believe. I
It
think
is the
it's
key. It's
it
the
is.
doing of it, really.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the results or what you hope to get or what you aspire to be. It's really just the doing of it. The playing of the music is really where it's at.
It's so cool. Well, okay, it's been wonderful having you on the show. We are out of time, unfortunately, but I'm so excited that we got to hear about your story and about what you're up to now. So I hope people get to see your new movie, The Scarapist.
The Scarapist.
Where is it going to be available?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, there you go. Check it out. Guy Hoffman on The Scarapist soundtrack. And thanks again for being here. It's so exciting and cool that you're here.
You're welcome. I enjoyed every moment.
Okay, awesome.
All right.